Thank Mullen, grumpy old Scotsman. How's everybody doing? So yeah, I thought I would take a look because I mean, listen, you just need to look at the news, just the news, and it's like it's one disaster after another, after another, after another for Labour. The latest news that's coming out for Labour is a Labour left-wing think tank, it's communists essentially, but a Labour left-wing think tank is now basically saying that Labour, Rachel Reeves, should target pensioners for the next tax raises. And the Labour Party wonder why their polling figures is crashing, and they've been crashing since round about April, May of this year. If you look at the track record of Labour, things didn't really start going really bad for them until spring of this year. Roughly spring of this year. They were riding kind of high after just being elected, and after spring of this year, they've tanked. They have absolutely tanked. That's the latest thing. The latest thing from the Labour think tanks: tax pensioners. Are you serious? And this is why most of the time when it comes to the news coming out from Labour, I don't even bother covering it because it doesn't need any explanation. Who in their right mind, seriously, would actually target pensioners who have already spent most of their working life paying into the tax system in order to get their pension, which is duly theirs because they've spent their lifetime paying into the tax system, only to have their pension taxed even more by a Labour government? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. It's just Labour think tanks. No, they're communist think tanks. That's what they are, because it's these same think tanks that say tax the rich, wealth tax, tax the pensioners because they're just sitting around getting all this money for free. Tax the pensions. But you notice when it comes to these Labour think tanks, they don't want to target their own group. The middle class. This is where most of these Labour think tanks come from. They come from the bourgeois. The bourgeois, as they used to be called over in France. The bourgeois. The wine drinkers that like going to their little wine bars in the weekend and, oh yes, dear chap. You know, if it was the Tory party in power, they would be toffs, essentially. But they're not Tories. They're Labour, so they're communists, essentially. And then it's like, tax the rich, wealth tax, tax the pensioners. It's all the groups that have got nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with them. And Labour wonder why they're so low in the polls. Let's have a look at this, shall we? This is from YouGov. And I'm going to bring up this, which is a trend line of voting intentions. Now that blue line up there that's currently at 29, that's not the Tories, that's Reform. The Tories are actually down there at 16%, which is the lowest polling trend line the Tories have ever had since records began for current polling methods. We're talking 60 plus years. This is the lowest they've been for 60 plus years. But they're not that far behind Labour, who are now at 20%, and you can see exactly where this started. You can see exactly where it started. It started roughly here, April 2025, and since then, Labour have been, on average, they had a little bump in June, but then they just started going downhill again in July. So on average, they're trending downwards. The wrong way, Vic. They are trending downwards on an average line. You look at Reform, they're trending up, and they've been trending up since roughly April of this year. And it's April of this year when a lot of the bad news started to surface for Labour, because they just couldn't get anything right. They couldn't get anything right. Going after pensioners again, which they always seem to do, going after pensioners for the winter fuel allowance. They done the U-turn on that, and that U-turn kind of did give them a little bump up at the beginning, kind of February of this year, but then the news came out about what they were actually going to do with the returning winter fuel benefit. They have wrapped it up in so much red tape, so much form filling, so much bureaucracy, and half of the whole process of actually applying for the winter fuel payment is done online. Would it interest you to know that over 80% of pensioners, especially the pensioners living alone, don't have an internet connection, don't have a computer, and if they've got a smartphone, they have no idea how to use the internet. This is why Labour put this in the first place. The actual process of applying for the new style of winter fuel allowance, which should be kicking in round about November, December of this year. They put half of the system online only because they knew most of the pensioners couldn't apply. Again, Labour think tank did this. Communists. Because most of the Labour think tank are far left. I'm not talking about just in the middle of the left wing, but I'm talking far left. Take all the money from the wealthy. Take all the money from the pensioners. We want more money for free shit. This is the Labour think tanks now. This is the Labour think tanks. And it was when the news broke at the beginning of April about how this new winter fuel payment system was actually going to be working, that's when Reform just went up. And since April of this year, Reform has been trending at over 25%, with the Tories and with Labour on a very gradual but very noticeable decline. And here's the thing about Reform. Reform's not just taking voters away from the Tories, they're taking voters away from Labour. Not as many, but they're still taking voters away from the Labour Party. What we're going to be looking at with Reform, if they actually end up winning the next election, which by all accounts they probably will, what we're going to be looking at with Reform is, for the first time since just before World War II and during World War II, we're looking at a broad church party. A party that has got the left wing and the right wing represented at the same time. Not since the coalition government of World War II, and not since the collapse of several governments just before World War II have we seen a coalition government with an equal representation of the left and the right. Now, some argument could be made the David Cameron and Nick Clegg coalition government that lasted for one parliamentary term was also a broad church government, but it wasn't really. It was basically ruled over by the Conservatives, which is why a lot of right-wing proposals made it through, and a lot of left-wing liberal proposals like the whole college tuition and university tuition fee, that got scrapped. It got scrapped, and that's what led to the ultimate crashing downfall of Nick Clegg, because Nick Clegg admitted he didn't have enough power to actually push his agenda as the leader of the Liberal Democrats during the Conservative Lib Dem coalition, because the Conservatives still had the majority. If Reform get in, you're looking at equal representation from the left and the right, with a leaning towards the right, because it's Nigel Farage that will obviously be the Prime Minister. This hasn't happened since World War II. Since the coalition war government hasn't happened since then. Basically, what it will essentially mean is, because Reform, by the looks of it, again, we've got, 4 years until the next general election, unless Keir Starmer calls it early, because let's face it, Labour's collapsing. They've been collapsing since April, and they're going to continue collapsing for at least another year and a half. It's the budget I'm waiting on, though. It's Rachel Reeves' November budget. I think she is going to royally shaft over half the country, because the country's bankrupt, or it's nearing bankruptcy. Anyway, that's besides the point. If Reform, and let's face it, they probably will get in, For the first time in a very, very, very long time, we will have a political party which is pretty damn close to the centre of politics. Yes, you'll have Farage, who's centre-right. But all the Labour supporters, all the left-wing voters, old socialists like myself, for instance, that's decided to ditch the Labour Party, all the centre-right voters who decided to ditch the Conservative Party, that's two completely different groups of people with two completely, not totally opposite, but different aspects of how the economy should be run, of how the NHS should be run. And what Nigel Farage needs to do is listen to both sides of the argument before he makes a decision, because the worst thing Farage can do is just jump straight in, both feet first, with mainstream, middle of the road, right-wing politics, and ignore the vast chunk of the lefties that ended up voting for him. So it depends how Nigel Farage basically wants to run this. But by the looks of it, especially the way that Reform has been trending, they are not losing in the poll numbers. They're consistently gaining, considering that Labour are consistently losing points month after month, considering the Conservatives have never been able to recover their numbers, and considering the Liberal Democrats, even though the Lib Dems generally do better in local elections for councils, they generally tend to not do better in general elections. Liberal Democrats have always been a local thing. They've never been a national thing. You can kind of thank Nick Clegg for screwing them over during that Clegg-Cameron coalition. But it all depends on how this plays out. It also depends on how bad things can get with Labour. We need to remember here, folks, this is only Labour's first year. It feels like they've been in power for fucking 10 years now, but this is only their first year. 1 year in power, and they are in utter shambles already. It's almost like we're looking at the last year of a 10 to 15 year Tory rule, because this is the kind of state the Tory party usually gets in if they're in power for more than 10 years. We've seen it with Thatcher. Her last term was an utter shambles. We've seen it with Major, who took over from Thatcher, Tory infighting constantly. This is the kind of thing the Tories usually do if they're in power for too long. Now we're looking at a Labour Party who's been in power for just 1 year. 1 year. And they're already falling apart. It's obvious to everyone, even Conservative voters, that there is no way Kemi Badenoch, the current leader of the opposition, the leader of the Tory party, can mount any kind of successful campaign against Labour, because most of the Tory heartlands are now voting for Reform. And it's become obvious to a lot of hardline left-wing Labour, not far left, but hardline left, the centre of the left of politics, hardline Labour supporters who are looking at the current Labour Party and thinking, this isn't the Labour Party I joined. This isn't the Labour Party for the working man, of the working man, by the working man. It's not. And it hasn't been that way since round about the beginning of Tony Blair's second term in office. The Labour Party is no longer the Labour Party. And the only party, which is the scary thing about this, Reform is essentially a centre-right party. They're on the right wing of politics. The only one of the major political leaders who's actually talking sense, common sense, to the normal working man is Nigel Farage. Oh, okay, and the leader of the Advance UK party, him as well, but everyone focuses, obviously, on Reform, because Reform's polling numbers are phenomenally good. But the only guy who's actually, or the only leader of any kind of major political party in the UK that's talking any kind of common sense is Nigel Farage. And this is why Farage and Reform are just like that, just constantly going up. in trending polls on YouGov, not just on YouGov, but on Gallup Mori polls as well, Reform is usually 5 to 10 points ahead of the Labour Party, with Labour trailing way behind and on the downturn. Now, I'm saying this as a man that basically gave up my Reform UK membership and went to join Advance UK, because I'm still very wary of how much Nigel Farage is going to court the left of politics. Because if you go too far into courting the left of politics, the wingnut, batshit insane far left will try and get their hooks into you. Which is what happened with Keir Starmer. It's what's happened with Starmer and Rachel Reeves for that matter. So I backed off from Reform UK until Reform UK can lay out what their overall plan is going to be, maybe a year from now, because right now they're still a relatively young party. I'm going to wait until things settle down. Right now I'm a member of Advance UK, because Ben Habib, just straight out talking sense, just straight out the door, talking immediate sense. Are Advance UK a little bit further right of the spectrum compared to Reform? Yes, they are. But Ben Habib's talking sense in every single interview I've seen that's got Ben Habib in it immediately talks common sense. He's an old school conservative. That's why. He's an old school conservative. And even with me being an old school socialist, old school conservatism does strike a few sparks with me. It does. But the difference between old school conservatism and old school leftism, socialism, is old school conservatism is all about businesses. It's all about businesses. It's all about wealth gain. It's all about money, essentially, which is what conservatism basically comes down to. That and being proud of the nation that you're in, which again, I can fully get behind. I am more than proud of the United Kingdom. Did I vote for the UK to become, not the UK, did I vote for Scotland to become independent from the UK? Yes, I did. But I'm still proud of the UK as a country. Still proud of the UK. I took the independence vote. We lost. Move on. Which is what the SNP never did. They never moved on. But I took Scotland. They wanted to remain in the UK. I'm fine with that. Drop the independence idea. Move on. I'm fully supportive of the United Kingdom. Proud to be British, essentially. But you look at Keir Starmer. Is he proud to be British? No. No. He's the very same person that said recently, a couple of days ago, we need to fight to bring the flag back to us. He's talking about the far-right extremists, as the BBC called them, that went to march on the Unite UK rally that happened on September 13th. Between 1 to 1.5 million men, women, children, grandparents who marched because they love the UK were branded far-right by Keir the commie Starmer. Starmer's not proud of the UK. Starmer doesn't want a UK. Starmer wants a UK that opens its doors to every third world country you can imagine. And he basically wants an amalgamation of everyone living in this tiny island. Okay, we don't have enough homes. Well, we'll just kick out British people from their own homes. And guess what? That's actually happening right now. Go on Google if you don't believe me. Search landlords evicting UK tenants for migrants. There is result after result after result after result. And the reason that's happening is because the Labour Party is cutting deals with private landlords up and down the country. Here's a suitcase of cash. If you've got any private let homes, we want you to rent out those homes to the government so we can put in migrants instead of sending them into hotels. What are the landlords doing? Evicting their people already renting there. Men, women, children, pensioners, out. Because the government's gave me tens of thousands of pounds, and they're going to keep giving me tens of thousands of pounds if I chuck in migrants in here. And it's happening right now, people. Right now. You think the hotel problem was bad? Just wait until you see tens of thousands of UK kids and UK families thrown out of private lets, so those private landlords can get the big money from the UK government to house illegal migrants, because apparently illegal migrants have more rights to a home than people born here. Again, far left thinking. Yeah. The sheer amount of insane news coming from the Labour Party. I could literally make 3 videos a day. Literally make 3 videos a day. But that would flood the channel out. That's why I'm keeping it to 1 video a day. If I can manage it, 1 video a day. But the amount of insane news coming from the Labour Party, how they are in the background willing to sacrifice UK kids in order to fly people or kids from Gaza in so they can get treatment. How they are willing to essentially bribe private landlords, knowing that the same private landlords are going to evict British families, throw them out on the street so that house can be given over to a migrant. This isn't Britain. And this isn't the Labour Party. It's not. It's not the Labour Party anymore. It really isn't. And the longer this goes on, and I think Keir Starmer knows this is why he's starting to worry. The longer this goes on, the more ahead in the polls Reform UK become. And the more ahead in the polls Reform UK become, if that translates into votes in the next general election, you're going to be looking at Reform UK having 100 or at least over 100 seat majority in the Houses of Parliament, which means nobody in the opposition benches have enough numbers to counter anything Farage and Reform do. Kind of the same state we're in right now with the over 100 seat majority that Labour have. It basically means if you're over 100 seats majority in the House of Commons, you can basically pass anything you want. Essentially. Well, unless you're Labour and your own backbenchers revolt against you, but you can basically pass anything you want. And the longer Labour's in power, the more screw-ups they do, and the more Reform takes the lead. If we had a general election tomorrow, I would vote Reform, even though I left the party, because I'm a bit wary with where Farage is going. I would still vote Reform. I wouldn't vote for Labour anymore. Being an old socialist, I don't recognise the Labour Party anymore. I stopped recognising them as the Labour Party during the second term of Tony Blair. They haven't been Labour since then. I sure as hell am not going to vote Conservative. Lib Dem's a wasted vote and I'm not going to vote SNP. So it's got to be Reform. It's got to be Reform. Anyway, that's it from me, folks. Have a good one.